Mario, we're waiting for a vote on for the Congress to formalize the impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. Right now, they're just finishing up on a vote to allow schools to serve whole milk in their lunch programs. Wow. Speaking at a fundraiser last night, President Biden criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, accusing him of kowtowing to extremists in his government and warning that Israel's counterattacks into Gaza, which he called, quote, indiscriminate bombing, end quote, is beginning to cost Israel support around the world. Prime Minister Netanyahu acknowledged disagreements but confirmed that Israel, quote, won't give in to international pressure, end quote. Could the Biden administration's support for Israel be waning? Joining me now to discuss this, Senator Pete Ricketts from Nebraska. He serves on 3 Senate committees, including the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Ricketts, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much for having me on again, Tony. I appreciate it.
Well, Merry Christmas. Let me ask you this question. Do you think the president, this is just more of kind of President Biden off the cuff, not really realizing what he's saying, or is this an indication of a weakening of U.S. support for Israel?
Well, I think this is more of President Biden just losing his backbone, as he is very much in the habit of doing. He flip-flops, he provocates, he goes back and forth, and this is just, in my opinion, another example of that. We need to support Israel in their war. The difference between good and evil here could not be more clear. The Hamas terrorists committed atrocities on October 7th. They shot unarmed civilians, they raped women, they killed little children. This was an atrocity. And by doing that, they declared war on Israel, and Israel now is at war with Hamas. And so every person who died on October 7th and every person who has died since then in Gaza, that lies the responsibility of Hamas. Hamas is responsible for all those deaths because they started this, not Israel. This is not Israel's fault. There was a ceasefire on the 6th. Hamas broke it and started a war.
Let me ask you this, because I was just speaking to your colleague, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, and we were talking about Ukraine. And, you know, there's this international sympathy for Ukraine, and I'm not saying it's not valid, of what Russia has done with their war crimes. Why do we not see the same international support for Israel when you look at the crimes, as you just cataloged there, done by Hamas to civilians who were just living in peace? There, as you said, there was a ceasefire prior to that. It was Hamas that started this. Why is the international community giving sympathy to them?
I got to tell you, it is one of the things that just boggles my mind, because, again, the difference between good and evil here could not be more clear. And where are the calls then for people to tell Hamas to surrender, to stop their attacks, their terrorism attacks? I mean, Hamas is an organization that in its charter calls for the destruction of the state of Israel and to kill Jews. This is an organization that must be destroyed. Not only will the state of Israel be better off when Hamas is destroyed, but so will the U.S. and humanity will be better when Hamas is destroyed. And this is exactly in line with the same types of thing that Russia is doing in Ukraine. We need to be helping both of our allies to be able to push back against this evil and really make sure that this, especially in Gaza, is destroyed, because the state of Israel cannot tolerate Hamas on its borders any longer.
I would agree with your assessment. You know, I think you share this. None of us want to see civilians, innocent people harmed, regardless of what country they're associated with. But I think that when you look at Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments in response to President Biden, he has an obligation to protect his people, and they've tried this. They have been on the short end consistently, and they have been under attack without end. And so I think they're wanting to try to secure their own country as best as they can in this moment. And if they don't take it, I don't think they're going to get another opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with you, absolutely. And, you know, and let's remember also that Hamas could end this all today by surrendering, having their leaders come forth, face the consequences for what the crimes they've committed. But Hamas could stop this today and end what is going on in Gaza. But they don't. You know why? Because they don't care about their own people. They use their own people as human shields. When Israel has told civilians to move out of the way of the battle, Hamas reportedly comes in and tells them they can't leave. I mean, they've obviously using these hostages they have as part of their shields against the Israeli Defense Force. I mean, this is an evil organization that needs to be destroyed. And why more of the world does not see this for what it is just beyond me.
So wouldn't that have been a better approach for the United Nations yesterday, putting forth this resolution calling for a ceasefire? Wouldn't it have been a better approach for them to call upon Hamas to surrender and end this war by putting forth those who perpetrated the October 7th atrocities?
Yeah, absolutely. And part of this, again, I think is what we're seeing is just the anti-Semitism that is, run rampant in this world, certainly much more than I really even realized. I mean, I knew there was anti-Semitism out there. We'd seen examples of it in our own country, but to see so much of it coming out in our own country on college campuses, but also in the UN with these types of resolutions. I mean, the UN is consistently, the General Assembly there has always been anti-Israel. And so it's not terribly surprising what they did, but a better approach would have said, Hamas, if you surrender, all the civilians dying will stop immediately.
Yeah. I mean, that would have put an end to it. The House, Senator, last question for you. The House has passed and sent to the Senate an aid package for Israel. Where's that stand?
Well, actually, my colleagues and I, used through a procedural matter, were able to get a vote on the Senate floor about that, and Senate Democrats blocked it. So we've tried to get that aid to Israel. In fact, that was, I think, about a month ago to get it done as quickly as possible. So it is obviously now wrapped up in the whole supplemental package that the president has proposed. That includes the funding for Ukraine, the Indo-Pacific, and of course, one of the things that we're demanding as Republicans is border security. Yes, we've seen what happens in countries like Israel when you don't have a secure border, and we've got to have our secure border first before we start helping out other countries, and that's what
it's just like on the airplanes. They tell you to put your mask on first before you put on those next to you. So we need to help ourselves before we help someone else. Senator Pete Ricketts, always great to see you. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Great. Thanks very much. Merry Christmas.